African priests, and he was talking to them, trying to impress them with what he knew. And he was talking about the oldest folks in Greece, and then finally the oldest one amongst them, who would be the high priest, stood up and said, Solon, Solon, this is his famous quote now, you Greeks are always children. Not you are a child, but you Greeks are always children. Speaking to what? That the animal mind is a child's mind. You haven't developed the willpower to learn how to handle your virtues. You don't have enough knowledge under your belt to know how to handle complex things. But he went on to say, the African priest went on to say that they had collected the works of anything great or beautiful that occurred any place in the world and put it in their libraries because Egypt had been spared geological calamity. The other great civilizations in the world that preceded or were contemporaneous with Egypt, most of them had been destroyed by a cataclysm, earthquakes, floods, you name it. But Egypt is just on a relatively stable geological platform. Now, one should raise a question on that. It was stable for a time. There had been earthquakes in Egypt, but more importantly, Egypt suffered what all of North Africa suffered. It suffered a tremendous dry spell that started roughly about 2000 BC and continues to this day, in which all of North Africa became a desert. And with the encroachment of the desert, we lost the ability to defend our northern coastlines. That is, the largest part of Africa is at northern Boge, and we had the migration of people to every other part of Africa and the world. And we had a disruption of our communication lines. Now, there's another book recently put out called The Altaic Sun by an author I can't remember. And he raised the same question, talking about a calamity that took place that devastated parts of West Africa and emptied a central ocean in Africa. It's called Lake Triton, by a Greek name, obviously. And it disrupted the communication networks and travel lines that were present in West Africa. And in Central Africa, we may have had a tremendous loss of life by sudden geological catastrophe as the plates began to shift in the core of the earth, on the surface of the earth. And so that we may have undergone a much greater thing. Now, question is raised that the physical things are a reflection of the spiritual things.
Yeah.
And they seldom occur without.
Yeah.
So I can't really speak. I can only speculate about that. And I can only speculate that some have said this fictitious thing, or who knows what, called Atlantis fell. Was Atlantis West Africa, as Sterling Means says? Or was it an actual continent in the Western Ocean or the Pacific Ocean? That I'm not prepared to comment. I lack the evidence. But the key issue is that people raise a question that there was some practices that were difficult, and that brought on some conditions. But I don't know if that's necessarily true either. But I do know that there was a great change as the Ice Age began to disappear in Asia, or in Europe or West Asia. Then we get the dry spell in Africa. Also, areas that had been large savanna grasslands became tropical rainforests. Lost even more land that way. So there was a great disruption. And this ice age is a cyclical thing. It occurs not just every 200,000 years, but every 25,000 years.
The ice age.
It's a periodic thing. Looking at the works of Churchward and others in the Dryden theory. So these are relative cyclical events, and clearly we had been able to match it before, but I think we were caught in a great year, if you will, in which one of the, like for example, the sun and its planetary system takes 25,000 years to make one complete orbit around the Pleiades system, or the North Pole stars. Suppose the Africans kept track of their migrations and kept track of when the next ice age was going to come on by seeing what position those North Pole stars were in. And we could anticipate when the ice age was going to occur again. Now, on top of that kind of ice age, the sun and its planetary family takes 250,000 years to make one complete orbit around the Milky Way galaxy. So we may have two cycles impacted at the same time.
Right.
And we may have had a super magnified ice age, and a super magnified or dry spell during this time. Now, I'm happy to report that just this year we're beginning to have, or last year especially, rainfall like we have not known it in Cairo in Egypt, places that have been dry heretofore. So there's a great shift in the weather pattern. So we're beginning the rains to come back, and we're beginning to lose the rain in the northern latitudes as it prepares for another onset. So there was a change in, so that before there was even the first European knocking on the door, we had decreased food sources, we had great loss of life, great interruption of our communication lines, because we had active communication between West Africa and Egypt. Ghana was Egypt's major trading partner during the 25th dynasty, for example. So that these are things that took place, and when we have these massive populational shifts, then we have usually conflict between brothers and sisters. And when that occurs, then you have a door open for somebody to come in and spread some gossip and play brother against sister. And that's a good way of saying it, because the first conflict took place, as I can see, between the black man and the black woman.
Really?
And that's one of the earlier conflicts. Sure. And later it takes...
How is that?
Well, I'm just trying to guess at it and looking at what's happening between us now. In that when the food resources, let's put it like this, when money gets tight, the sister says, no food for the children, then no love life, baby. When no love life happens, Jones might want to go hunting around on the outside, and that's sure enough key of death. And then Jones and brother gets to play around, he's going to cause chaos with somebody else's family.
Yes.
And then we have key conflicts, like in the drama, we get a little bit of allusion to that, when it's even said in the, I don't know the level that it speaks to, though, because I'm not really privy to that, and I'm not ignorant of that. And it speaks even how the original conflict took place between Seth and Wilseer, was that supposedly Wilseer, in the darkness of the night, mistook Seth's wife for his own and impregnated her. And Seth became enraged and laid a trap for Wilseer. It wasn't done intentionally. So that may be a little bit of that story. I'm just raising the question about sometimes we can get in a state of mind in the darkness, and when you don't see your way clear, when problems are occurring. But I'm looking at that during a time of decreased food resources, we have a time in which Africans had more difficulty meeting the basic requirements for the family unit, and the sisters and brothers are thrown into conflict because the sisters go look after her nest, no doubt. And that's what the queen's position is. And then for we as the king to have the responsibility to be able to shelter that family, to feel that it's not being done because the forces are greater than what we have control over. And we know it's that time we're going to submit to it. And to see your children, well, I see it on the West Coast, you see it here in New York. It's the same drama that's being played out in black families right now. It was played out when the rainfall got short and the grain got short. Yeah. The same drama. And we're so asking some of the same questions. How do I satisfy my woman's request for shelter? How do I satisfy her request for taking care of my children, our children? How do I satisfy that? And can I do it? And how do I go about it? And I have a command, and I love her, and I don't want things to fall down. And then she loves me too, but we're trying to raise this family.
Absolutely.
And then also finding real viable ways and not getting trapped by illusion that you need all of this, you need all of that, when in fact you need each other. And so we may overdo it. And how was it when we had all the grandeur? We're accustomed to so much luxury, if you will, and then that gets taken away. Or did we begin to have some confusion occur around our own inner vision? So those are questions. I think there's a physical part that has to do with reduced rainfall. There are questions that have to do with a person who looks like us, who does not think like us, who comes to the household and begins to put new labels and new ways of doing things, and we begin to try it because it's new. And we try it, and it causes tremendous chaos and disruption. It's like if you've had the experience of having a very close relationship with somebody, and you know that this person's either thinking new thoughts on their own, which people will do, or somebody is putting poison in their mind, trying to make them look at you a different kind of way, trying to retranslate their mind. And you say, wait a minute, baby, you ain't never said something like that. Wait, that ain't your words. That's not coming. I can feel that's not coming from you. It's not coming from you. And she's in desperation. She's trying to answer the question, well, why don't we have enough? You know, she's trying to answer the question. And she's not, and the two of you are not answering the question. And then somebody else at that critical moment puts some seeds of distrust. And also they're trying to turn them out, often sexually too, because they're trying to use sex as a means of control.
Right.
And so we cannot escape the role of taking care of our children and the role of sex in this whole drama. We cannot escape that. Because they came on other kinds of dramas, other kinds of ways of getting off. And there was experimentation. We find that there are references in the by Margaret Liebman, who's a European African writing in ancient Egyptian literature, to in the Old Kingdom. There's a reference where he says, where the brother says, avoid the he/she.
Who is the he/she?
The he/she is a man who acts. You got it.
Yeah.
A man who acts like a woman. So that, in other words, that when often that occurs sometimes when there is problems that occur in the family, and the man leaves, or negative energy is presented by the man, or there's not enough knowledge to teach the kids of how to answer the questions in life, or the roles get confused, and the father figures, the father image can become confused, and the child can misidentify the male child with the female.
Yes.
Or sometimes people coming with deviant sexual practice will actually force themselves upon the children. And when a child is at a stage when they're just beginning to experience their body, you touch a certain side, it's going to feel something. And begin to program the children into homosexuality early on. Many people are turned out in early on years. I'm not trying to say all people do that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that we have to look at this issue because the issue of the homosexuality did appear in ancient Egypt. But it may appear at a time in which we had the invasion of others coming with different points of view, and they were less clear about who they were. They were less clear about their own identity. There was a fear of approaching blackness. And if you're looking for immediate gratification, and there's a beast right next beside you, if you got an animal mind, any old hole might do. Any old hole might do. But if you got a black mind, there's only one hole. That's the hole from which life comes.
Absolutely.
And you can get in. It's not just a question of just getting in it. What you do when you're in it. and as you're relating to this, can you feel the spiritual response from your mate? Are you being honest with each other? Are you embraced? Can you both really rise to heaven? Is the relationship blessed? You know, and all these things. You know, as opposed to, and we come back to again with the current day examples of African people. Many of them who are empowered, who I personally know. I got to talk to my fellow black psychiatrists who treat my own black professionals. And they tell me the problems that are rampant. I know the problems that are rampant in our so-called powerful black families. And many of them are just spaced out sexually. I hate to say it. They're lost. Some of them have very strong virtues and are really dealing very strongly. But many people are just lost. Lost. Don't know. Trying to find something that will give them some satisfaction. And what used to work today, that becomes dead. You got to go on something else now. So this is the life force which is trapped at the sacral or gonad level, sexual organ level, because a person lacks knowledge of the correct relationship with each other and the greater world. And they also lack the will. They have not had role models of how to practice the will to hold on to good, normal, if you will, normal relationships in which both people prosper. So that when the woman perhaps get mad at the man, rather than say, oh, you ain't nothing, I'm going to go get any old thing, I'm mad at all women, you can recall, yeah, my mother was some kind of woman. She was beautiful. My grandmother was sweet as can be. Yes, my cousin is sweet as can be. My daughter is fine as can be. Rather than recall, we get these blanket, all men, all women ain't nothing. That's true. And it gets externalized. So again, Africans had in their depiction of the female deity, they depicted the female deity when she was wrathful like Sekhmet, the lioness. They say, but hey, she got some other sides to her too. You know, so just because you hear that line, you should be able to quote, as the brother said yesterday, Brother Van said, you should be gentle. Work with it. You can see it coming. You can do what you have to do to let that pass, or know that it's happening because something else is not there. And it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
If she's going to fall something, it's your responsibility as her mate to do what has to be done to cool that out as best you can.
I love that.
So that's the relationship part. That and if it does occur, then your love must be strong enough to endure it. Because as sure as you're enduring her, she sure enough is enduring you.
You know, you open some very real dimensions that black men really need to deal with, and that is the relationship between the black woman and the black man, which is so critical to our survival. And I think that the European very effectively has manipulated that.
Very effective. Very effective.
There seems to be, out of our slave past, a subconscious relationship between the black man and the black woman that he is and she is in tune with, that the black man blanks out because he cannot deal with it on the level of being able to impact it, to turn it around, because we're not in power.
Well,
so rather than deal with
yes,
it, we just block it out. But it is a psychological, subconscious relationship between the black man and the black woman out of that slave dimension. And she knows that we are not the primary provider, primary protector. And there's, I mean...
Well, see, that's the illusion. It is an illusion. Because the black man is the primary provider and the primary protector.
Talk to me, Richard. I need this. Because these sisters been telling me that they can do it better than I can. They can make
primary provider and the primary protector. But to see that, she's got to know the history. And that's the key to cover it up, is to hide that history in the past and in the present. And the key is also to put false labels on reality in the now. So let's kind of look at it a little bit and as to how the game is currently played. The game is currently played is to say, first of all, black woman, you're nothing. You're nothing because you're black. Your hair cannot be straight enough. Your skin cannot be white enough. Your hips cannot be small enough. Your breasts cannot be small enough. You do not have the features of the queen. Okay, so as he paints images of the Queen of England as being the archetypal prototype. And that's being done to create an image that she can never be. Again, painting an image of what Mary looks like. And when if Jesus is white hair and blue eyes, and that's perfection, then can I produce a child out of me that looks white hair and blue eyes? No. Then I'm not perfect.
That's true.
I can't be perfect. The devil's black? Well, if the fall of my way get away from that, then I can't produce anything that's perfect. So that the seed of my body will not even be godlike. So I produce devils. I don't produce gods. So she becomes afraid. Here's a very key point, that she could not produce gods.
Yeah.
And so a force comes through. And so it's not me speaking, it's something else speaking. But the producing of gods, I mean the smaller gods, the individual gods, the human gods. So our children cannot look like them, no matter what. And the more black we look, the farther away we are from it. And so not only can she not look like them, but neither can her offspring, which is the epitome of how she gauges herself partially as a living spirit, but also as the mother. And if I don't perform that role, many people define the circulation for their ability to be a good mother and to produce their offspring. So that produces a negative sense. Then another one is, even if I did produce it, he can't take care of it. He cannot produce food, clothing, and shelter.
Right.
And very important, he cannot do it in a way that Lever to Beaver says it on television. He cannot do it in a way in which the imagery paints it in the media. He cannot produce it in a way that they have a 2-story, 3-story brownstone, one of the common black TV shows does. He cannot produce it in a way in which their kids are all going to college, and another common black TV show that has many very positive parts, but still that part we that we, I mean, has some very excellent part, but that part is a little bit tough, because we can't all be, we're not all professionals, you know, with two income dumping in the same place. And so that we have these images of what we're not able to do. But that is a lie. And also he tries to paint it, and so in the core of the black woman's mind, she feels that she's not good enough. She's not good enough. And he also says, yeah, you look like that because you came from the jungle. We gave you Christianity. We gave you knowledge. So that the religious, the historical education is given for most folks is given in their religion. They don't get most of this stuff about history. They get the Constitution and Americana, but they don't get the ancient history. That comes in the church. And it's given a certain kind of view. But that history that is being made available in the church has many excellent points, but there's some points that are the mis-cover-up, the intentional cover-ups of history being placed in the church to make our black people feel this way. But again, let's put the church in perspective. It was a very profound, it enabled us to survive enslavement. And the only way that we could meet as a congregation, more than 2 people, or 4 people, was to meet as a church on the Sunday. And we would usually give our communications in our different songs that we would sing. We're going over freedom, so-and-so's going over tonight, doing slavery. But yet, now we have, slavery was so bad that most of us don't even want to remember slavery.
Do you think we should talk more about slavery?
And exactly. You cannot face it. You cannot solve a problem by not talking about it. So that the facing of slavery, when I talk to my grandparents, for example, they do not even tell me about what it was like to live doing heavy-duty Jim Crow in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Amen.
They automatically block it. There's an automatic block about painful things. They dress it up because they want to supposedly spare their children from talking about it. That's what they think they're doing. But really, they're trying to avoid the rage that would occur in themselves and in their children that would command them to act. In other words, if you face the slavery, you begin to feel such rage coming on you, such feelings overwhelming. You think it's not just all rage. A lot of it is knowledge. A lot of it is the pain, the love. It is your ancestors living in your blood trying to speak to you now. And we just hear the tip, the rage. And we can feel it's like a freight train hitting you all in the face. Right up a smack. It's going to overwhelm you, and you don't want to deal with that. That requires knowledge. And again, in our African systems of education, we had an elaborate system to train people of how to approach and develop that inner mind. It took years, not months. We had an elaborate system of education to train folks of how to tap and to work with the inner mind. But again, the enslavement did occur. But back to the key point, I keep getting away from the question. The key point is that we were raised in a culture that intentionally covered up the history that black folks were the mothers and the fathers of all world culture and had been here for thousands, if not millions of years in organized culture before there was anybody else, and did it grandly with great works of art, tremendous cities, towering sculpture, beautiful parklands, minimal violence. Minimal violence.
No prisons.
No prisons. Did it with people who could relate to each other because, hey, that was heaven. In other words, we're talking about heaven. Heaven was a real thing. There's other degrees, no doubt, on other levels. But we saw ourselves as gods on this earth. And we lived as gods. And we lived in heaven on the earth.
Richard, there's 2 things. I want to get back to the illusion that the black man cannot protect or provide for the black woman. But very key, religion, as we know it today, is the essence of that, though, comes out of the system that you're now talking about, heaven. Can you speak to that in terms of what we perceive as being values and symbols and rituals in present day Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, having its origin?
I do want to finish that last piece first.
Just bring it in.
Because I'll bring it in, but I'll come back to that. In terms of how we envision the primary role, as my little meager mind can see it, for a man and a woman is to heal each other in the day-to-day struggles. That above and beyond having diamonds and gold and Cadillacs and 10-story penthouse, whatever it may be, is can I help you talk about what you've gone through today and to take those burdens off your back and to let you talk about, to me, a fellow living thing, about anything that crosses your mind. Can I be your walking library? Can I be that to you, and can you be that to me? And also, can I help lift you up? If I see that you're down, you know that you're down. Can I help come to you and lift you up and give you what you want, and give you also what you need, even though you may not want it. That's primary. I think the other way in these European paints is that if he's not bringing home all this material stuff, then you're nothing. And what you find is that when the person gets the material, the hunger is still there.
Yeah.
They think that if they get this diamond, or this mink coat, or this Cadillac, or this airplane, or this 10-story penthouse, or this library full of all these books, in my case, if they get all of that, then people will then accept them as being valuable. Then they will see a few will accept you as being valuable, but not for those reasons. You will attract those who want the very same thing that you now have, and they'll be busy trying to scheme how to get from you what you have just now accumulated. Or if they can't get it, how to make certain that you lose it out of jealousy. The whole crabs in a barrel kind of situation. So that's the illusion which the white person paints out of his or her paranoia, because see, they have an ice age mentality that says the ice age might come tomorrow. They live in a place where there was no food. They starved all the time, routinely. And so they have a very acquisitive approach of always wanting to accumulate, a rainy day mentality, and it is basically a paranoid, what we call anal sadistic personality. It's paranoid, it's an anal retentive personality that, quotes, holds on to things, and very importantly, here's a key point we must not miss. They get pleasure in the pain of others. It's a sadistic mentality. That kind of developmental stuff is a sadistic mentality that gets a thrill out of watching someone else bleed and die.
Richard, that is
There's a
devastating.
sadistic, materialistic, anal retentive personality that is at its root afraid of females and afraid of going with the flow. Afraid of feelings, afraid of the heart.
And you find that to be present within the white psyche on a broad basis.
A broad basis and free. And I say white psyche in its most generic sense, those who were conditioned by the Ice Age and those of African descent who identify with that kind of orientation. Those are general rules that I have applied and found to be true 99.9% of the time.
So in actuality then, you're right, the black man does give the support, the real support, and provides for her the substance that is necessary for the maintenance of a healthy mind and a relationship between male, female, God, universe, nature to make us whole. And we have supplemented the truth for the illusions of what is real. So we are actually, you're defining the real world from the...
It's very real, very real. I mean, the coming together of men and women tonight in an embrace, be it sexual or just holding each other, is divine. That's a holy, that is a divine, that is a divine, holy event.
Oh, I agree.
That's a divine, holy event.
Yeah.
My wife had to pull my coat because I was ignorant. She said, boy, don't bring anybody in our bedroom. I said, I'm just going to watch the football game. That's where the big TV is. And so she knew better than I about how holy that space was. Yeah. And I'm a hard, it took me a decade to barely wake up. How holy that space was that you have to just make it a special setting. Create it. Let it be special. Because when you come together, not always be sex will be taking place, but sex and all of its higher, because sex is not only reproducing children, it's also the meeting of the spirits. When a person has what some call an orgasm, and they leave their body, and you feel yourself floating in space itself, you have contacted your spiritual body. And there is a feeding of the soul that allows you to go back and face the world the next day and say, all right, Mr. Rent Man, Mr. PG&E, hey, what about it?
What's up? What it is?
What it is?
I really thank you for this dialogue. I'm trying to figure out how to do